Once again from Harmony Central, I'm very honored to be sitting with Chris Martin at the Martin booth at NAMM 2014, and we've looked at a lot of guitars and we've played a lot of them, but there's a history here that's really, really exciting that's led to a book, that's led to a research project, that's led to an amazing display of guitars at the Met in New York. And so just, you know, how'd this come about? Why, and two questions, how'd it come about and why is it so important to tell this story?
You know, it's my family's business, and I've told the story of the immigration of my great-great-great-grandfather to the U.S. after studying with Johann Stauffer and, you know, learning how to build a guitar like this. And I thought, okay, and then in our museum, that's the first case, a bunch of Stauffer-style guitars. In the next case are guitars with rectangular headstocks, and the body is a little different. And it never dawned on me, being in the family, to think about why. Why did that change happen, and why did it happen so quickly? So a bunch of people with a lot more the ability to really forensically look at a period in our history where he never kept a diary, so we don't know what motivated him.
Okay.
All we really know is his work. So they took our collection, they took instruments that they knew of that were either in their personal collections or that were friends, and they managed to put them together chronologically. They weren't dated back then. There were no serial numbers.
Right.
But they managed, they said, you know, this seems to be the order in which they were made. And then they looked at the very significant change and looked at the market. They looked at the market for guitars in America. And they said, while this was happening, after CF had come to America in the 1830s and through the 1830s into the 1840s, Americans became enamored with the Spanish classic guitar. Okay. Not this. No. Okay. So, and this is what he knew how to make, and he made them very well. They're extremely delicate. They're really, these are European guitars meant to stay at home. Okay. Here you are in America, you're an immigrant. You buy a guitar, you don't stay home. You head west or south. Right. I don't think
you go somewhere.
I don't think they held up very well. So he looked at the market. He said, okay, the market wants these guitars from Spain. I can probably make those. And one of the real pieces of serendipity here was the guitars were being made in southern Spain, Mediterranean, warm, humid, all the time. Interesting. They come across the Atlantic and they arrive in the Northeast. Right now, I'm afraid to call home right now because the temperature is like 2, and my wife and daughter are there. You know, we're blessed out. We're blessed out. Okay, so the guitars weren't holding up. Interesting. So he had started his career with his father in Germany making furniture. That's what my family did before CF went off to Vienna to learn how to build guitars. So he had this background of manipulating wood. Then he learned from Stauffer, so he had a sense of the dynamics involved in building a fine acoustic guitar, and copied the Spaniards. The funniest thing, and there's a great picture of it in the book, and I've seen this thing, when a Spanish luthier builds a guitar, traditionally they take an elongated neck, and at the bottom of the neck is actually the body block, which is an integral part of the neck. It's all one piece of wood. Okay. And then they cut a couple of slots in the side and build the body around the neck. Oh, interesting. And awkward. Yeah. And CF, because he was a cabinet maker, used a dovetail. You've seen a dovetail, right? Pull the drawer out. Yep. And so he said, and it's so much more convenient. You build the body, you build the neck, you put them together at the end. Right. But because of the tradition, and we love tradition in our industry, yes. Because of the tradition of the Spanish guitar, part of that block on the back was an extension, and in various shapes, and it was called a foot. And there was a theory that that foot had to, it basically came down here, okay, on the inside. Right. That was an integral part, again, of keeping everything aligned and structurally sound. So he put in a fake foot. It had no purpose other than, oh, it looks like a Spanish guitar. Right. And so from this book, the conclusion was drawn that Mr. Martin pivoted the business and made a better mousetrap. And the market responding.
Yeah.
And so that's what you see when you go to the Met. That's what you get out of this. And there's a lot of color in here about the relationships we had with artists, even back then.
Right.
And how influential they were, not only in assisting us with the design, but promoting the brand. Way back.
Right.
You know,
right.
There were artists and Martin who had a common connection between the beauty of the instrument and the quality of the music they made.
Right. And I would imagine that the people going to the Met sort of range across all different types of people, from people who are just into art, people who are into music, into guitars, kids, adults, and are you? What kind of feedback have? I know it just opened,
Yeah.
But what kind of feedback or previews?
And I have a great deal of respect for the Met, as anyone if you've ever been there, but
Yeah.
they always acknowledged the relationship between Manhattan and my great-great-great-grandfather. Before this exhibit, if you went in where the musical instruments were, there were always one or two old Martin guitars on display with a short narrative that said, the reason they're here is because he was here.
Right, he was in New York. He wasn't in Pennsylvania.
He started in New York.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So they've always had an affinity. So did they come to you, or did you go to the Met? I mean, the book came first, correct?
Peter Zago.
Yes.
He made the initial connection. They warmed up to it. We were warm already.
Yeah.
And then he got the three of us. He was sort of hey, let's get Martin and the Met together. We went in, had a nice lunch, we talked, and it took a while to make it happen. It's going to be up for a year.
Amazing.
Which is unusual. A lot of times at these museums, it's 6 weeks, 2 months, in and out for an entire year. It's really cool.
Yeah, and then hopefully it'll be so successful that it will come out here. It'll travel.
It's not, at this point, it's not planned to travel. What possibly might happen, I would think, might be a smaller version.
Right.
Because a lot of those guitars that aren't ours, they reside in the Northeast, and their owners may say no.
Yeah, it's not going on a
It's
truck.
one thing to drive it to the Met.
Yeah, don't put it on a truck.
Yeah.
Well, it's really exciting, and I think what's so exciting for me as a marketer is that we're often are just, when we look at guitars, we're like product, check out the guitar, play it, and that there's a real story here that the aficionados may know, but the regular Joe and the layman guitar and all those types of people, they just don't know the story. Right, you didn't
know why.
Right.
And it was, he was creative, he was clever, he was market savvy.
Yeah.
He saw there's not a very big market for these.
Right.
But there's a big market for, we must have here we go.
Okay.
Not that far away from what he was making, certainly in terms of shape. They're very similar. This is a larger guitar, but this is basically what he came up with. And imagine a slightly smaller version of this. Square head, slot headstock, wide fingerboard, 12-fret neck, beautiful figure-8 shaped body.
And when people saw the square neck, I mean, I don't know if they found this in the story, but how was it? I mean, everybody was used to that neck, and then this happened, and the square. Yeah.
Everybody who liked Stauffer style was used to this neck.
Okay.
And of course, the other funny thing is, have you ever seen a headstock like that before? I mean, maybe anywhere, maybe around the show.
Yeah, somebody has that. Yeah.
No, they actually more were, and back then there were. So there's this kind of mechanism, which were very expensive.
Right.
There were these tuners, and there were friction pegs, which were probably pretty dodgy.
Yeah.
Back in the day. The other thing that's, again, it's a mystery that we're trying to put some facts around is the X brace, which Martin's known for. And so again, in the book, it talks about, and believe it or not, now you're familiar with how the back of a guitar is braced, a couple of transverse braces.
Right.
Early guitars, and even, not recently, but not all that long ago, guitar makers would take 2 or 3 of those braces and run them underneath the top. Terrible. Did nothing for the sound. All it did was hold the guitar together. So, in Spain, where they were keenly interested not only in the beauty of the instrument itself, but how to bring out the sound to its maximum, they said, all right, we've got to get rid of those transverse braces, except maybe not right here. That looks like a good place to put one. So that one stayed. This one down here's got to go. And they began to experiment with running braces like this. Cross enough of the grain to really, but not too much. And that's, on the top, that's what you're looking for, just enough but not too much. So CF, early on, mimic that. Because that's also what was on the Stouffer. They were called fan braces.
Got it.
And the father, the fellow that's really given credit for really refining it is a fellow named Mr. Torres, who came a little later. But so everyone was doing it. And what was the premise behind why would C.F. Martin have developed X bracing is that when he transitioned from the tie bridge, like you find on a traditional Spanish classic guitar, you tie the strings,
yes,
to the pin bridge. So you imagine back then, you're building a guitar completely by hand. Everyone's different.
Right.
There were no standard models. One of the things you've got to do is make everything align itself. So one of the very last things you do on a guitar, after the neck is in place, is determine where is the bridge going to go. So it might move around a little bit. So this is supposition. It's possible that he's moving this thing around, he's looking at everything to get it all in line. He goes, okay, I got it. And then he's got to drill through the top for these, and he drills right through a brace because he had to move the bridge.
Right.
So we think what he said was, well, that didn't end well. What if we took 2 of those braces, made them a little beefier, and spread them out like that? Right there.
The X brace is born.
The X brace is born. And then there's a couple of tone bars down here. Now, there will be some, not controversy, but there will be people that will read this book and they'll say, I agree with most of it. And the one thing that there may continue to be disagreement on is the origin of the X brace. So what I'm saying at this point is, based on what I know and what I've read and what I've heard, I truly believe C.F. Martin did invent the X brace. I would love to meet someone who has a guitar built prior to the earliest Martin X brace guitar from the early 1840s, authentically built by someone else,
right,
and have that discussion. So they can say, Chris, you're wrong. But until I meet that person, I think he invented X bracing.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we really appreciate your time. We know it's a busy show. It's a great story, and thank you so much for your time. Yeah, thanks everybody. Signing off.